In a world where two short-term rental bros come together.
What?
Not in that way, bro. There's a podcast of truly epic proportions where we talk about all things short-term rental and shoot the shit along the way. Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast. Here are your hosts, Matt Codd and Austin Spitz.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Co-Host Bros, the only place where you can hear the good shit, the bad shit, the ugly shit, the awesome shit. I wanted to change the intro because I got bored. My name is Matt. I'm here with my buddy Austin Spitz. How's it going, Austin?
Oh man, it's good. Everything's good. How's everything going with you?
Shit, it's been a crazy week, huh? A whirlwind. I mean, we had a meetup a couple of days ago. Bill Faith came, and there were a lot of people came, and it was pretty insane. I think we were there until almost 10:30, right? I think it was somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think the original event was 6 to 8, and pretty sure we had more for your second meetup. You had more people there this time around than the first time around, and then of course we got Bill at the second meetup. So I'm not sure what kind of tricks you have up your sleeve. If that's if you can top that, I don't know. That's gonna be a tough April meetup to follow. So yeah, it was great. It was great to come out, chat with everybody, make those new connections, and then that was my first time speaking with Bill. Personally, one on one. So that was cool to meet him and him to share some of his nuggets.
Yeah, I definitely got a lot of coaching time on my end. I don't know what I have up my sleeve. I do have a mastermind meeting in 2 weeks in Gulf Shores. So I may do some solicitation, maybe see if we can get some pricing gurus, or maybe Kim Fitzpatrick from Launch Host. I know she wanted to be on the podcast, but she also said she might come to the meetup. So I may do some persuasion on that. I can't guarantee I'm going to get a special guest every time, right? But I'll do what I can to provide value. Bill said he enjoyed it and that, he does plan to come back eventually. So, hey, that's a win in my book, right?
Hey, yeah, you did your part in building the community, man. That's really what it is. Because when I saw the people that came the second time, it was almost the same exact faces from the first time, plus a few additional people. So you already had that return, return group of people that you did something right the first time, where they all pretty much came back. So
Yeah,
that
almost
was awesome.
everybody came from the first one, and then we had a couple of newbies. We did miss a couple people. I think they were busy, but overall it was pretty successful, I think. And I think everybody got a lot of value. So we do have a question of the day, but before we go into the question of the day, the question is really pertaining toward you. So I'll ask you the question, but there's a couple of little things in the news I wanted to cover. One, AirDNA is going to start having STR zoning data. So have you seen that? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that, and I don't know anything about it, honestly.
Yeah.
For AirDNA, I utilize it, but I know my market well enough, since I'm only in one area, that I can kind of know what, just from experience and being out there for a while, I kind of know what property will do what in what range. Based on whatever the amenities are, I'll kind of already know my market specific, so I don't use it. I feel like it's almost AirDNA is not as accurate as I can be, but I think it's a great tool to utilize. And I think the only time I've used it is like the free version, where I can go in and just key in an address and the bedroom count, stuff like that. So why don't you talk on that? Because I'm not the biggest, I'm not the most well versed person on AirDNA, but what you got?
I think it'll be good, and it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be good because you're going to get a glimpse at the market and be able to see the data points of the market to what kind of restrictions there are. But everybody's going to be like, oh, well, that's all the restrictions it has, so I'm going to go buy the house. But they don't check with their county or city. So it's not going to be 100% accurate. There's going to be no tool in the world that could be 100% accurate. It can't be 100% accurate on what the earnings are possibly going to be. I mean, it's close on most things, on some markets, right? Where it's like a dedicated vacation market and there's lots of data to back it up. Markets like Pigeon Forge and stuff like that, it's probably really accurate. But I think that there's just so many data points and so many API keys that they're not going to get from other people that it's not going to be 100% accurate. People are going to rely on that, and that's going to be an issue. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think the way I take it is use AirDNA as a resource but don't heavily don't put all your eggs in one basket based on AirDNA. Learn the market to the best you can, and then whatever you're doing, whether you're buying or trying to pitch a co-hosting client, run the numbers very conservatively, like almost like worst case scenario, then best case scenario. And I always say err on the side of worst case scenario. So if you're signing a co-host client and you want to go, you can beat what they're doing, but you don't want to overkill it and promise something that you may or may not be able to deliver on. So yeah, I always say just use AirDNA. Definitely use it as a reference point. But that's interesting updates there. So they're going to try. So basically, what you're saying is they're going to try and factor in regulations, local regulations, into the analytics software.
Yep.
So you can see it. I don't know. It could be good, but it's also like in my market, it's weird because it could be skewed depending on what neighborhood you're in and what HOA, and they're gonna, have the specific HOA rules in that property address that lines up and tells you what the HOA says is you're supposed to abide by. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I think that was to my point, is that basically, if it's not available online, it's not going to be able to scrape this data. If it's not public knowledge, it's not going to know those things. So it's not going to know that your HOA is like, well, you can have renters, but they can't bring a goldfish, right? Or something. What is some abstract rule? So that's why I would err to the side of caution with everybody. If you do use that tool, I would still check with your zoning. I would still check with your, it is zoning data, it says. So it doesn't necessarily say restriction data. It says zoning data. So it could just be like, yeah, this zone's okay for short-term rentals, and that's pretty much it. But you would have to check with your HOA to see if, you're required to have 28 days or more, can't have dogs, whatever the case may be, I know some places have restrictions based on their septic tanks, so things like that. So another thing I saw, which is freaking hilarious, and I was telling people about it at the meetup, and I was just dying when I saw this email because VRBO can't get shit right. But VRBO came out with a rate automation tool, and their first sentence of their rate automation tool, which I almost fell on the floor, and I'm a big guy, it's going to take me a second to get up if I fall on the floor from that. It says that the rate automation can make you from 5 to 30% more. What the fuck is 5% more? Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's so broad. So within a 25% swing, they can make you more with the rate automation. So I think that they can't even get half their shit right anyway. So I don't even know why they're attempting this, just to be competitive, I guess, with Airbnb's rate automation. What do you think about that one?
When you say rate automation, you're saying like the equivalent of what Airbnb smart pricing is?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's going to be this. I assume it's going to be the same thing. You don't want to use it because they are already saying 5 to 30%. It's not a concrete number. It's big range. But the main point, their goals for your listing are different than your goals. Your goal is to maximize, revenue and strategically maximize, occupancy. But their goal is to bring in as much money as possible. So, like we've seen historically, the smart pricing on Airbnb will be much lower than what something like Pricelabs or Wheelhouse will suggest, because their goal is to maximize your revenue, and Airbnb and VRBO's goal is to maximize the money they bring into their platform. So it's not always aligned. It's really never aligned. So I think it's the main point is, I guess it's a great feature that they can add to their platform. Well, yeah, I guess not really, but what you should be using is dynamic pricing, right? And we know that. We both use that. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
I think it's going to be an occupancy game with them. So you got to understand in your market, when there's the high times, you want to go for the ADR and you want to go for that revenue. But if it's the low times, that's when it's kind of an occupancy game, right? So you already know that February, you're not going to get any bookings unless you lower that price and you shoot for occupancy. And you're going to have to shoot for occupancy in the slow seasons so that way you can make it through the slow seasons and you still make money. And then when you hit those busy seasons, that's when that price goes up. So I don't think a VRBO will do that. I think their pricing will be similar to Evolve. I don't know if you ever seen Evolve's pricing, but they don't price their stuff correctly, and neither does Vacasa. It's just ridiculously terrible. I don't know if they just use smart pricing or what, but I've seen houses where it's like 150 a night, and I'm like, wow, I could book this house. Peak season is July at 150 a night in July, 5 months up from now, and they don't even realize like why isn't the rate higher 5 months from now? I mean, maybe if we were like 2 days from now, let's talk about a lower price, right? But we're 5 months out into somewhere where that's peak season. Like that's just insane. You can get a way better rate for that. And if I was a guest, I'd be looking for that kind of stuff. I would look for things managed by Vacasa and Evolve just so that way I could take advantage of the shitty pricing structure and get a good deal,
Yeah.
right?
The only Yeah, yes and no. The only caveat that is you're going to get into a property that's managed by an Evolve or Vacasa
Yeah.
person versus like a property that if you stay with us, it's going to be different than one of those. So you got to be able to roll the dice. With that price comes the cost you got to pay for your stay,
Yeah,
right?
you definitely get what you pay for on that one. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Either way, I guess, but yeah, it's a dangerous thing. I'd be curious though to see if somebody set the rate automation on VRBO and the rate automation on Airbnb and see how close they were to each other, right? I'd be curious to know that. Um, and see, and maybe no, I'm not going to test it. I'd say maybe I'd test it. Hey, if you test it, let us know. Oh, actually, I did want to bring something up too because I was looking at it the other day, and I don't think I told you about it. Um, it's pretty neat. So I wanted to talk. I was looking at the places where people are listening to our podcast from, um, and there's somebody who habitually listens from Bochum, Germany. So if you're the person that listens from Bochum, Germany, shoot us a DM because that's freaking awesome. I think that's really cool. We also got somebody who listens habitually out of Belgium and Brussels. So either one of you two, shoot me a message, shoot us a message, one of us a message on social media because I think that's really cool. Um, I'm excited and I really appreciate y'all listening, but I just wanted to give a shout out to, the two people listening from another country because that's pretty badass. Um, anyway, so Airbnb actually just put in a change to their extenuating circumstances with weather. So basically, and I'm trying to pull the article because I don't think I wrote good enough notes to explain it. So they revised their major disruptive events policy and explains how Airbnb handles cancellations and refunds with large scale events that prevent the reservation from happening. So the policy will only apply to events in the place where the reservation is located. Events that impact guests' ability to travel to the reservation are no longer covered. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Foreseeable weather events at the reservation's location are explicitly eligible for coverage if they result in another covered event, such as government travel restriction or large-scale utility outage. So there's an eclipse coming up, right? You have bookings for the eclipse at a high price. I know our previous guest out of San Antonio, Andrew White, has bookings for a large price. They're saying there's going to be grid issues. So if there's grid issues from this eclipse, we get fucked. That's what I'm understanding from that?
Yeah, I'm not really understanding what they're saying. Are they saying like if there's weather issues, they're going to, just to answer this simply, if there's weather issues, are we losing power, or is the guest gaining power, or are we gaining power? Like sounds like we are losing in that situation. So it's giving what the way I understand is it's giving the guest another out if weather is bad.
Yeah,
Basically, is what you're
or a
saying, right?
large scale outage, power outage. So, like if I don't know what Airbnb would consider large scale. I mean, I don't know if they're like, okay, the whole block of where I live is out, so that's large scale, or the whole town is out. I don't know what the difference is on that. Way I understand it is more like hurricanes and stuff like that that prevents them to get there, but they may have to just prove that. I don't know. And then it said government shutdown, so that's kind of just like, just in case COVID happens again or we get something new and the government decides to shut down the world, right? You can get a refund. So, I mean,
I think
it's tough.
It yeah, I think it kinda sucks. I think it sucks for the guests because if there's bad weather, I mean, it depends on how bad the weather is, because they can make it seem like it's the most worst thing in the world, but is it still travelable? Probably in Texas, most likely. But yeah, I think it's more harmful to the host, especially if you book someone out months in advance at a very high rate or potentially on a holiday weekend, and then all of a sudden, they're not looking at the weather within, a week before, probably, if that, and all of a sudden the day before weather's not good for them. They blocked up your calendar. You have this, thousands of dollars payout that's supposed to be yours, but you can't go back and get it rebooked now because weather is bad. So to me, that harms the host more than anything, and I think that that sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a challenge, and we'll see. We'll see over the next couple months. I don't think it goes in effect until June, if I'm correct. Yeah, June 6, 2024. Regardless of when they booked. So if they booked today and after June 6th something happened and they weren't coming until after June 6th, they can use that on you. Um, but we'll see how it goes, I guess, in the forums and in the groups and that kind of stuff. And if it comes after June 6th, then you have a story about how that happened to you, and you have like some kind of credible evidence. Like, don't just tell me it happened, but maybe show me the weather or something. Shoot us a DM on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or TikTok. But because I'm curious to know, I'd like to see what would happen from that. So yeah, that's interesting. So I do have a question, and I want to ask you the question. So when co-hosting, one, who pays for the maintenance, and two, what if something does happen, maintenance, what should you do? If some kind of issue with the owner's property, what should you do? And then who pays for the maintenance? How does that work in your structure, um, Austin? So
It's kind of a loaded question because it's very situation dependent. The way our co-hosting business is set up, I have all the owners sign a credit card authorization form, so everything is going to be paid for by them, everything. Um, so I have no liable debt at the end of the month. And then I kind of attach receipts into a Google Drive. So I do it a little differently that way. I think it all comes down to what is in your contract. What did you agree upon? Our contract, I believe, is $250. I don't need approval for that. I can, fix the problem. Also, in addition, like some of these times it's an emergency, and if you can't get a hold of them, then there's something in there. I probably need to revisit my contract, but there's something in there within a certain amount of time. If it's an emergency, then I can just act on it, without it. But for the most part, anything over 250, if time warrants it, I just check with the owner. They will pay for the maintenance. Now, other people that own property management companies, I think this is the traditional way, is they will probably consult with the owner if it's a big ticket item, but they'll go ahead and get the issue fixed, and then they will be expected to be reimbursed from the owner at the end of the month for fixing their property. Now, I don't like that, and that's why I don't have it structured that way, because perhaps owner didn't approve of the vendor or this, that, and the other for whatever reason. You're stuck with, you know, putting improvements to their house that they may at the end of the day not pay you for, then obviously you'll lose them as you'll fire them as a client for that, or perhaps if it's big enough, get in legal trouble. But I guess there's other property property management companies that structure it that way. We just do it differently. It's preference. That's the way I prefer to do it. There's pros and cons of both sides, but I think if it's time sensitive, get the problem solved as quickly as you can, and then have to answer your question, for the most part, all of this needs to be spelled out in a detailed co-hosting agreement that they signed off on, so it's very clear of what to do when these kind of situations arise. And even if it's sometimes under 250, whatever. If I have the time and it's not an emergency, I will consult with them, just so there's a little more transparency of what's going on at their property, just because that's the way I operate. But yeah, hope that answers it for you.
Yeah, and I know Andrew he did it differently, and he told us how he ended up stuck for $20,000 bill. If you guys want to hear about that, you can hear about that in episode 6 of the feed. But yeah, so he does it totally different than you did it. Have you ever had an issue where it's an emergency situation, you had to spend a decent amount of money over the 250, and the customer got mad, or the client got mad at you?
No, but I had a recent situation where that did happen. They didn't get mad because it was like it had to be fixed before the guest got there, so I just had to act on it. It was over a certain amount, so I had to just spell out an email. Hey, this is what we did. Here's the line item pricing. Here's everything that we had to fix. Otherwise, we would have to cancel on this guest, and you're going to lose out on this revenue. So this is what we had to do, and it worked out fine. And I think that's just part of this industry is a lot of the times is you have to be able to make these tough calls and tough decisions, and you want to keep the owner in as much know as possible, so you're not getting yourself in any trouble. But sometimes you just have to take action, and it's like, you can't let these things sit and fester. It's like, especially if there's like a water flood, or a hot water heater busted, like at my own personal property recently. It's like, I don't have time to okay, you want it, you can get back to me tomorrow, and the house will continue to flood, and I won't send somebody out there. Or it's like, hey, I got my plumber guy, he's gonna be in 30 minutes. Like, if you don't like that decision, then we probably don't want to work together anyways, because you just don't understand that that's what needs to be done. So, but we don't have any issues with that, and that's why one thing that's very important to us is we vet our owners. Like, there's been properties that I've turned down. I've turned down a lot of properties, and it's just because I don't like the vibe that I get from the people, and we don't have to take your business. So I think that's the main thing, is like, from the get-go, you have to be able to vet these owners to the best of your ability, and if you're getting a vibe that, like, man, this person is going to be a pain in the ass, like, this person's already, bitching and whining about this, that, and the other, and I can just tell long term this is not going to be a good client, we just say no. It's like, okay, well, find someone else to do it then, because it's not a good fit. So maybe I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
No, that's good.
maybe that answers.
And that's good. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions all the time. I mean, so you communicate directly with your owners through email most of the time?
Yeah, email or text. I mean, we're small enough to where it's, at some point we probably need a little more structure for that, but it's at least one pro of our business for now with the under 10 properties. It's like, I'm very, can be very casual-ish with them and upfront and transparent. So it's like, I can just call them and do it myself. Now, as we scale and somebody else is dealing with this, that will be, an operations manager or something like that. That'll be their problem that we'll figure out how to handle it from there. But for now, as small as we are, as just a, regional co-host, I can do this. I can take care of it.
So have you had a bad client that you had to fire yet?
Yeah. We've had a bad client before. It just wasn't a good fit. It was an inability on their part to give up control. And I think what it came down to was, they ended up wanting to move forward, and continue. And we kind of just draw the line. It was like, hey, we are hired here to do X, Y, and Z. If you're preventing us from doing X, Y, and Z, and it's every time that we were trying to operate, every time the owner intervenes with our operations, it causes confusion and headaches. So while they think they're helping or they know more than us, they're just complicating everything. And that's when the problems arise. And then when the problems arise, they come back and they make us look bad for somebody else's intervention. That's when we're like, okay, yeah, we'll have to just go ahead and part ways. And I think they're few and far between, because at the end of the day, most of these people are wanting you to come in and take that burden away. It's sometimes difficult with people like even me. I'm kind of like that. I have a little bit of control issues where that's kind of just like the entrepreneur in me. Like I've got to be doing everything. So sometimes it's tougher for those clients that they want to continue to control, and it's fine up front. Like the first few months, it's going to be like that. Hey, Austin, why did you do it this way? What are we doing here? How does this do? And once they understand how your operations work and this is how we do things, they get into a routine and they understand. Oh, he just does it this way. I don't need to ask him. And then they get to the point where they leave you alone. That's how it should go. But then it was one time, and they wouldn't go away. So it was just kind of like, hey, if we can't operate the way we need to operate, we had to go. So you've got to go. So, or we've got to go. Yeah.
Was that tough? Was
Huh?
that tough?
No, it's part of it, man. It sucks. I think it's more tough dealing it when you're in when you're in it. I think it's ripping the Band-Aid off it's not that hard. I mean, sometimes it's like that's life. You got to be able to have difficult conversations with people and,
Right.
convey your message. Yeah. So no, it wasn't tough though. It was a while ago anyway. So
For sure.
what's tough is the loss of revenue, but you have to just swallow that pill and just be like, okay, well, I'm not going to make this money that I was going to make, but is the headache that comes with that money worth it? And that's what it comes down to. So
100%. So do you take control of their Airbnb account? So do you go in and like put yourself on a co-host, or you put you as the regular host?
yeah, just every listing, they own the listing, and we are attached as co-host and the primary host. So all messaging and everything goes out our way. Our at the end of the day, we have a structure in our contract where they can be, if it's a problem, they can be removed from messaging and stuff like that. And there's ways to get them off that, or you make another account with a Google Voice number or something like that. There's ways to do it, and if typically one issue is always the client having access to messaging, where they're sitting there, big brother following along after everything you're doing, when they hired you to do this, so they shouldn't be doing that. So if it becomes an issue, there's print in the contract that says, hey, if it becomes an issue, um we will take action to remove it because you're interfering with the way we're supposed to be doing business. So we will do that. But from the beginning, we try to leave the clients out of the communication process when messaging guests. And the reason for that being is it's just going to complicate and cause problems. Plus, they hired you to do a job. You should be able to do your job without them, necessarily interfering. And then you reach out to them if you have any questions or anything. And the whole point of this is to make it passive for the client. So it's like, if you want to be babysitting, your property manager, then it's like, okay, well, you should do it yourself because you think you know better. And I'm sorry if that comes off of rude, but it's like, hey, we know what we're doing. This is all we do. So we should be able to run our business the way we want to run our business. Now, I don't have, if you're not causing any problems, I don't care. We're just going to keep running business. If you see messages, whatever. We have nothing to hide. But with that being said, it's when it becomes a problem that we have to take action to be like, hey, either this isn't going to be a good fit, or we've got to get you off of the messages and you got to go, move on with your daily life. And when we'll reach out to you if there's any issues. So that's the way we do it.
So you don't change their password then? They still have access to that account?
It depends. It's situational different. Usually I won't mess with it until it becomes a problem. So it is what it is.
Okay. What about on VRBO? VRBO, you have to invoice, right? You got to invoice because you can't get paid out on that automatically.
Yeah. VRBO is different. It's a whole nother thing. I don't know. I just make the account for them typically. If they already have an account, I'll just operate through it and link it up through Hospitable. But for the most part, VRBO. Yeah, and that was another question I wrote down. Let's skip this. Is it VRBO or Verbo? I mean, we've been in this long enough, and I still don't know, because I hear it said both ways. And it was one way, then they got bought out, they changed it to another way, but I don't know which way, and vice versa.
Well, isn't it the same thing?
Because I say VRBO. I say VRBO.
I say
and
both.
I think you've been saying Verbo.
I say both, but isn't it
Yeah.
the same though? Like, instead of, I mean, I guess it's a what is that called? I want to say acronym, but I don't think that's the word. But yeah, VRBO, but it's easier to say Verbo. I guess. I don't know. It's both.
VRBO's easier to
Fuck it.
say.
It's both.
VRBO's easier to say.
It's whatever we say it
Do what
is.
makes you happy.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, yeah. But on that note, I want to bring up one thing we haven't talked about, and I've kind of just glanced at your shirt there. I kind of want you to talk about that because it's funny, and I think if you're a host, you know exactly the message that you're trying to convey there. So tell us about this. Why are you so proud of this 4-star review you got printed out on your
I
shirt, Matt?
made
Huh?
this I made a co-host bros shirt. It's a test shirt. It's not official. It's not for sale unless you hit me up and you want it. Then we could talk about it. But it's a shirt. I was in the supermarket before this too, and everybody was like trying to read it, and I was waiting for someone to come to me and be like, "Oh, that's so ironic." So it's basically it's one of my reviews, and it has 4 stars on it, and it says it was the best day ever. I cannot wait to come back. And then it says co-host bros on it because it's ironic because those fuckers out there give you 4 stars and say it's the best place ever and I can't give 5. Like, what? So I just thought it was funny, and then I was thinking about it today, like, oh, I could have done a 1 star. That'd have been funny too. But so I'm wearing it. So if you want to see the shirt or what it looks like, it's my prototype shirt. You can see it on YouTube. Uh, Co-host Bros at Co-host Bros. And we're at Co-host Bros everywhere except for TikTok. We're at Co-host.bros. Couldn't get the at Co-host Bros. Don't know why. I might try to change it if I can. But yeah, so I basically just was fiddle fucking around, and I was like, I'm gonna make a shirt. So I just made a shirt, and my wife is like, "Oh, I like that shirt," and it's slimming, so it looks good on me, and yeah, it stands out for sure.
Yeah, I think first of all, it stands out to if you're a host, you understand because you've gotten this before. If you haven't gotten this before, you haven't been in the game long enough. Because I've got a number of these where it's like best day ever. This was amazing. We're going to be booking again, and it's like it's weird because it's like it's oftentimes they'll do overall 4 stars, but then they'll go in and they'll put every subcategory 5
Yeah,
stars. And I get these for whatever reason. And I even explain in my messaging, hey, if you enjoyed your stay, a 4-star review means that things were inadequate and there are things that need to be fixed based on the platform's view of what a 4-star means. And I still put that in there, but somehow they still slip through the cracks. But anyways, like I said, they'll do 4 stars and then 5 stars in all the subcategories. But what they don't understand is the listing rating comes from the overall rating, right? I mean, correct
yeah,
me if I'm wrong, pretty
yeah,
positive on that.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's like you thought you were you thought, and it's like, especially on new listings, I got that one on a new listing, and it was like, I was like, hey, I appreciate the review, but you understand, like, you just crushed me. And they're like, oh, we are so happy with our stay. Like, okay, well, you didn't crush me, but it's like, okay, this is going to take a while
yeah,
to make a comeback from. I'm going to have to need like 5, 6, 7, 5 bangers in a row to even this sucker out.
yeah. Your
So,
first 3
yeah,
reviews,
I think it's
your
comical.
3 reviews are gonna say like 4.67 or something. You're gonna think you're trash, but yeah, I started. So like I'll try to review the guest as soon as possible. So as soon as my cleaner there, I'm like, how's the house? How's everything look? Whatever, blah blah. So technically they check out at 4. Hopefully by 4:45, I'll be able to review that guest. I will text that guest and I will say, hey, thanks for being such a great guest. I really appreciate it. I went ahead and left you a 5-star review. I'm gonna text them on their phone. And I said, I really hope that we did earn a 5-star review from you. If you had any kind of issues, just shoot me a text back and let me know, see if we could resolve this. But other than that, thank you so much for staying with us, and I really appreciate you staying. So most of the time, it'll trigger something in their head like, oh shit, I should leave him a 5-star review. Like, right? He's thanking me so much. He's really happy that I came. He left me a 5-star review. And when you say like, I stole it from Bill because when we talked about it, but when you say like earn a 5-star review, it gets them to be like, okay, like it helps them along, to get you the 5-star review. So really, I just made the shirt to be ironic, but yeah, that's a little pro tip. But so we're running short on time, so I just want to say thank you everybody for listening to us. We really appreciate it. This is episode, I think it's going to be like 11 or 12, maybe 13. I'm not sure what number it's going to be, but thank you guys so much for listening to us. We really appreciate it. You could follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. The episodes come out early, and you get to see the video. I'm getting a little better with the video editing, so it's starting to look not too snazzy. But yeah, check us out at Co-Host Bros, and check us out by our names as well. What say you, Austin? We hit the nail on the head, or the head on the nail?
Yeah, in your words, we hit the head on the nail. So I think we're good, man. We covered a lot. Good insight. Just a couple of co-host bros. We're
All
out.
right, later.
The